Recording in progress because I know me. So I always try to make sure I hit that record button first. Um, so while we got guests, incoming and whatnot, as guests come in, guys, please mute your microphone because you will have the opportunity to do Q&A, ask questions, of our guests. But prior to that, since this is recorded and I know people are going to be looking at it from multiple time zones, multiple areas, multiple countries, guys, welcome. Thank you guys for coming out here. And what I wanted to do real quick before I introduce the guests, I just want to take a couple quick minutes to have a little brief chat on the part of this plant that we're going to talk about because a lot of people don't know what we're talking about in terms of this plant. So I'm going to go here and share my screen really quick. Okay. So the screen is shared and I have pulled up my presentation. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go through my whole presentation with you guys, but I just want to find a couple basic slides to reiterate what we're going to be talking about today. Now, the vast majority of the human race, when we talk about hemp, the first thing that they think about is this plant right here, the one on your right, okay? It typically grows 4 to 6 feet tall. And this is the one that they take the buds and the leaves, okay? And they actually extract. Let's see, I got another guest coming in here. There we are. So what they actually do is they take the buds and the leaves and they separate them from the stalk of the plant. Almost kind of like when you were a kid and used to get in your trouble and your mom used to say, go outside and pick a switch, right? So you come back in with a switch and she'd rake that stuff off and you left with the switch. Well, the stuff that they rake off, that's what they use to extract and get the CBD oils, which leaves the stock of the plant. Okay, that's the one that you mostly got your whipping with, right? But there's another version of this plant that doesn't grow 4 to 6 feet tall. There's another version of this plant, like you see on your right, it grows 15 to 20 feet tall, guys, and that is a full-grown man. Okay, and this one is primarily grown for that stalk of the plant, the long portion, not necessarily the leafy material. Now, when you're growing this one, you're growing it for, fiber, and you can't tell, what the fiber looks like at this point. So if I turn this picture here to the side, you can see separate phases once it's cut down because you have the stalk of the plant. The outside of the plant is what we call bast fiber, and the inner portion or the woody core is what we call hurd. Now, it takes special equipment typically to separate the fiber from the hurd. And this is what the fiber looks like separated from the hurd, okay? And here's another picture of the fiber separated again from the hurd. And typically to do, now back in the day, they used to do a lot of manual processing of this stuff. But nowadays they have big equipment that's called decortication equipment right here. And that's what decortication equipment does. It separates the fiber from the hurd. The hurd is used for applications like hempcrete. The micronized hurd is used for plastics and things of that. But the fiber, this one right here on your left-hand side, this one is used for, it's been back in the day, it was used for ropes. It was used for ship sails. Patagonia, has a clothing line. So anything to do, with the fabrics or fibers, they're typically using the bast fiber for that. And we have the great fortune this evening of being able to have a chat with my friend Summer Star Haeske. I am very excited for this because I swear this has been 2 years in the making of girl, I'm gonna get you out there. Girl, I'm gonna get you out there. We just been missing each other and finally was able to coordinate, get her out here to talk about some things with the fiber side. So just so you know, her and her mother, her mom's name's Barbara Philippone. Please go look her up. Barbara Philippone is a giant in this space. She's got over 40 years, in hemp fabrics, hemp textiles herself. They're doing things in multiple countries. Summers, fifth generation, with this as well. So combined, we're looking at 60 to 70 years worth of experience. Now, with the 2018 Farm Bill, okay, we're only talking 2018 when, things were legalized and hemp was moved off of Schedule 1 narcotics. But they've got damn near 70 years with this plant. So you guys have a wealth of knowledge at your disposal. And I could not be happier to have her out here and introduce my friend Summer Star Haeske. Can you hear me, girl? Are you there?
Yes, thank you, JJ. It's
How
a
are you
pleasure
this
to
evening?
finally be on your podcast, brother. We get to see each other on occasion at the trade shows and share some
Yes.
space and time, but we finally get to come live here and share some of this knowledge that we get to share usually within the industry. And I love that you started with the difference because that often comes up, all the time. I mean, there is a lot of misconception, and when JJ shows you those pictures, not only is that, I hate to call it a CBD variety because there's so many wonderful cannabinoids. I like to call it kind of a cannabinoid variety of low THC cannabis versus what true industrial hemp really looks like. And so, with true hemp, it's always going to start in the field. This is where we're talking about a truly sustainable, drought resistant crop that can really change the world and provide so many different components and parts and products. And most people know you can everything from eat it, clothe yourself, to helm yourself with it. So but it's important to understand that too when we're talking about our soils and our farming. You've got one plant per square meter versus 150 to 300 plants per square meter, depending on the variety. So
Right.
with true industrial hemp, you've got your seed and grain variety, your dual purpose varieties, and your fiber varieties. And it's males and females growing together. And it, like I think JJ mentioned, more similar to bamboo. You've got one single stalk. So when people talk about the bast fiber, it's in the fiber world, it's considered what's your ribbon fiber. So, which makes sense. You can literally take your hand and break the stalk, or take your fingernail and kind of get a start on that bark of the plant and pull it off that stalk like a ribbon. And so all your fibers encased in that outer ribbon, and that is then gonna go to, in most cases, your fiber products. But there's different ways to do the decorticating. So, JJ showed a great example of a decortication facility that is in a facility. It's bringing in stocks that have typically retted in the field. Depending on where you're located is kind of how you're going to want to plant and how you're going to want to ret. One of the biggies that I see for decades now that people will talk about is, hemp is antibacterial, antifungal, anti-yeast, but it's interesting because, if it's not done properly,
Yeah.
like in the field, your hemp could turn to black mold overnight if it's not done right. So, we've seen a lot of farmers come in and have had the misconception of just sow the seed, throw it out there, let it grow, and just let it do whatever it wants. So you really do have to kind of know how to care for your plants. Um, One of my favorite stories, JJ, I don't know if I've ever told you this one, but I have a very long time associate in the industry that goes back many decades with my mother. He happens to be from Russia. He was hired by the Russian government to document the wild varieties of hemp and have the seed available at a seed bank there.
Hmm.
And long story short, he was documenting this wild variety. And this village, the people kept saying, there's this one plant that's out in the woods all by itself. And while you're out there, go try to find it. It doesn't look like anything we've ever seen before. And he went and he found it and he documented it. And he said it was the strangest thing. It was just one female plant all by itself. And this went on for 2 or 3 years, where he's documenting this small crop and this one particular plant. And each time he couldn't find the plant. And on his way back to the village to his car, he'd come across it somewhere in the woods. And after 4 years, that plant had moved itself right up to an old lady's home on the edge of town.
Oh,
And
wow.
he said, I think I've proven that hemp and cannabis is communal with human beings. And
Wow.
and when you look at all the amazing things that hemp do, It's pretty obvious that it is. It's here to provide us with so many incredible products, from healthy foods to healthy clothing. And, we're just kind of hitting a time in the world where people are starting to realize that it's just as important what we wear and put on our bodies as to what we eat and put in our bodies.
Absolutely.
Um, you know, it's really to a point where we've got these forever chemicals and these microfibers that are literally everywhere. There was just a study that came out 2 weeks ago by some scientists that were testing Mount Shasta in Northern California, which is a very special place. And they said, we knew we were going to find microfibers up there, but we didn't realize it would be to this extent.
Mm.
And it's so much, and they don't even know where half of it's coming from. So it's in our air, it's in our waters, we're drinking it, we're wrapping ourselves in it. So I often like to kind of start people off with the idea of pick those main products that mean the most and make the most difference. Have your base layers that are always going to be natural fibers. If you start to look at the things we're wearing, our undergarments are always synthetics, and they're against our most sensitive areas and the hottest part of our body. Then your base with your t-shirts. If you're going to be outside on a hot day, or getting out in the gym and getting your body temperature going, make sure that you're wearing natural fibers. Hemp, of course. I'm a little biased too. Not only because, it's what I do and it's my mission on this planet, but of course, there's a reason why my family decided to focus on hemp. Technically 5 generations in natural fibers.
Really? Wow.
Um, but my mother's the one that decided to focus in on hemp. And when you kind of look at the fabrics in the world, it's like a pyramid. Just like anything else, it's like a pyramid. The best is on the top, and it trickles down. And when it comes to natural fibers, the best on the planet are always the bast fibers and animal fibers. And of course, with our animal fibers, we always want to make sure that it's a kind treatment. I have a lot of people that'll say, I don't want to wear any animal fibers. It's horrible. Don't, we shouldn't be shearing alpacas and these kind of things. But, these animals have to be sheared. This is part of caring for them.
Yeah.
If you weren't going to shear a sheep every 2 or 3 years, it would weigh so much and end up having mites and all sorts of things
I've
that
seen
it would,
some of those videos and pictures. It's horrible. They come
yeah,
from
and
like
it'll kill
so
the animal.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen that,
So
Um,
people have to be aware of, like, no, these are things that live in harmony with us. And as long as we, handle things and have with sustainability, it's always about kind of every step of the process, that it's whether it's an animal, making sure that they're kindly handled, or it's a plant that's now getting harvested down and getting ready to go into goods. What's the next step? What's the next step?
yeah.
What's the next step? And until you're on a farm and you watch 100 alpacas get sheared, and they're like doing happy dances and prancing and rolling on the grass because they feel so good.
Yeah.
You go, okay, I mean, this is definitely, we're living in harmony, and these are things we're supposed to use. So, um, it's interesting. It's interesting. And people have an issue sometimes with silks too because of that, and they don't realize the lifespan of a silk moth is only going to be days, So it's kind of like, were they put here for this product for us, or were they meant to live for 3 days and die, you know?
While we're out here talking real quick, and we're gonna dive into Q&A here in just a second, but just a quick shameless NoCo plug, right? You and I first met at NoCo a few years ago, and those who never go to like, I don't believe NoCo is gonna save our industry. I feel like us coming together under one roof and us being able to make connections like the ones that you and I have we take those connections, and it's all about what we do once we leave, a function like that is what determines the momentum in the space, for the next year. And if you never come and connect with people, you never know who to connect with after you leave. And the gym bag that I bought from you, I still beat the piss out of that thing to this day. And it is a beast, you know.
Yeah.
So and I would have, you and I would never have, this relationship and this friendship now if it wasn't, for that. And we heard some great announcements and some things, that should be forthcoming, fingers crossed, good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, so I am definitely, blessed, to know you, to have had the opportunity, to meet your mom, and it's all because of, that one event. And I know we've got people out here, from different areas of the world. Remember when I told you that story before about, when you were a kid and you were bad, and your mom said you go outside and you get your switch and you bring back and they rake the leaves off? Well, I watched Wilton Terry have to go get his switch. Remember my buddy Wilton? He's actually out here on the Zoom. And look, I watched him go get his switch, and after he got beat with it, I got beat with it too. That's how close we were. So he's probably laughing in the background right now. But he's out here
I
as well.
remember those days.
Huh? Do
I
what?
remember those days.
So hey, Wilton, Summer, Wilton, wanted to make sure y'all are out here together, along
Yes.
with a host of others. Did you have anything that you wanted to ask her initially about?
No, I'm actually listening to the history that she's speaking of, dealing with just multiple fibers. It kind of takes me back to when I was in design school. We had to learn, the different characteristics between natural fibers and synthetics, and also just the history. A lot of times dealing with the polyester, nylon, viscose, and those, they were created because, of course, natural resources are limited. So you can produce, ample yards or yarns of the polyester or any synthetic, but when it comes to, like you said, the silk, the hemp, the cotton, you're only gonna get a certain amount throughout time. And when you said that, dealing with fashion and the history of clothing, a lot of times those premier materials that are natural fibers, back in the day, they used to go to the royals. They used to go to the kings and the emperors
Mhm.
and those, and it all the other stuff trickled the bottom of the pile trickled to the peasants. So, and the thing is, hemp is such an old fiber. It was used for ropes and ship making in biblical times, even before that. So, I mean, a lot of times I've studied it, and hemp is always something that I wanted to be able to work with. But of course, with the laws in the United States for so long, we would always, if it was an opportunity to even as a tailor to work with the hemp fiber, we had to source it from outside the country and get it, shipped in. So I'm just so happy that this is transpiring. And once again, it's a blessing for you and James to have met one another and us to be so close. And it's just amazing how everything just dominoes. So I'm just happy to be here. So I'm just gonna learn and I'm gonna listen and see how much I can absorb.
My man.
Mhm. Thank you,
Something
finally. Mhm.
something too that's pretty cool that people don't know. So there was a little movie that you had some involvement with. There was a movie, it was Woman King. I mean, did y'all do some outfits or something for that, or how'd that work?
What?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I want to hear this. This is great.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a very special one. It all started years ago, actually, with Pirates of the Caribbean had, needed some materials from us, and we sent, of course, all the samples. Little did I know that our samples were going to end up in the fabric showroom at Paramount Pictures, and that so many designers loved the material so much that I actually became the most recommended fabric supplier for Paramount Picture Films. So I ended up doing The Last Airbender. Actually says that everything they produced was with our materials. So everything from, the entire sets to all of the designs that you see in the film. And then that's how the designer for the Woman King originally met me, was through The Last Airbender. And so when she was working on the Woman King, and it's a production company that's out of Canada, but of course they were filming in Africa. And so the first round of materials ended up going to Canada. And then we ended up delivering into the middle of the desert in Africa 2 or 3 times. And so, they said, are you sure you can get it here? And I said, I can get it anywhere. Like, just where does it need to go? And I said, and with this kind of a program, you already know this is divinely guided, and we're going to make sure y'all have what you need out in that desert, and you're wearing some good hemp fabrics. And so, it's interesting because, like, when you see the women wearing that, it's like a stretch knit top, you wouldn't have thought that that was a hemp material, so when you talk about like the synthetics and learning in school and design school, it's interesting because it's a very small blip of information that they give to designers on the materials. And unfortunately, oftentimes they're focused on the materials of where the endowments are coming for the design schools. So back in like 2005, 2006, we had so many students in design school that were like, why are we not learning more about natural fibers, and why is it so limited? And the misconception of the fact that it was much more limited than it truly was at that time. Throughout the whole 90s, there was a huge craze about eco. They called it eco, and it wasn't organic or sustainable or anything. It was like, oh, natural materials, natural products, and eco, green, green, green. So by the early 2000s, there was quite a variety of materials around. And yes, it was around the world, and in the US, we really only had a cotton industry and some woolen industry. We actually had a really great wool industry in the US for a very long time, with 2 of the largest mills in the world. One being in Vermont for almost 90 years. And it was very unfortunate that they had to close their doors in the last 10 years. And but it's been this constant ever since synthetics kind of came about. And the original synthetics were like, well, it's too much labor, okay, to take the hemp fiber. When we had the Hemp for Victory campaign during World War II, and there's an old World War II film that's an old black and white, and it's like, do do do, hemp for victory. Here's the guys over at the Ohio Hempery that are, on the gins milling away for hemp rope for the war, and they had a mandate for farmers that said you had to grow a percentage of your land for hemp for the war. And that'll lead us into something that's going on today here down the line. But it was all about, well, it's too labor intensive. It's too labor intensive. And we can get cheaper rope from the Soviet Union and other countries for the war. And it's too labor intensive to think about doing more materials out of this. And of course, after the war, we had a lot of chemists that came to the country and brought that technology and information and built out a lot of the first chemical companies in the US. And with those kind of materials, I mean, like polyester, okay? Most people don't realize polyester has been using a wood-based pulp from the very beginning, because you have to have a binder and materials to hold these materials together. You can't just put a bunch of chemicals into a vat and spit it out the other end. How's it going to hold itself together? So you have to have wood pulp, you have to have waste materials, you have to have a lot of these bio-based waste products to then go into these materials. But of course, when they're making those fabrics, they're spitting it out the other end like fishing line. You know,
Yes.
it's no longer a fiber spinning together to make your yarns and your fabrics. And so, you know, oftentimes when people say, well, why is hemp so much stronger? And I'll say, well, imagine those fibers. We know when you're thinking about fibers, it's like little hairs. You know, cotton is anywhere from a half an inch to 3 inches maximum. Typically, like 2 inches is kind of like, you know, grade A cotton, and what the fiber world thinks is long staple length would be anything like over 1.5 inches, 2 inches. That is grade A right there. But with industrial hemp, and when it's done right, you could have 8 to 18-inch long fiber. You know, but the problem is there's no systems that can take on those long fibers in this country. So, you know, it's not like the same facility can process hemp that processes cotton if we're not trying to cut our materials and our values short.
Yeah.
It's not the same spinning and combing and carding systems. It's not, you know, I mean, the whole systems are very different from one another, just like the chemical companies are spitting it out the other end like fishing line. All the different fibers all have their different lines as well to be able to take on those materials. So, you know, it's interesting that we're in the time we're in right now. You know, this is a very, very crazy time, you guys, in the US, and it's
Here
very
we
surreal
go.
for me. It's very surreal for me. I'm feeling like I'm living in a dream right now because, you know, we've been fighting for over 40 years to bring hemp back to the US. And our materials that we have developed all over the world. I mean, when I was a child, I had to go live with my father in Denver because my mother was all over the world and rebuilding factories and setting standards and grading and specs and, you know, all these things all over the world. And there was some locations she was bathing out of buckets in factories for months at a time to be there and build these factories, you know. And when she was first headhunted for hemp, and sent to the mountains of Transylvania. Okay, she was headhunted and she was told, "We hear there's hemp in the hills of Transylvania. Go find it and develop this product line for us." And she gets there and she goes, "You guys, it was not even 6 months after the assassination at Ceausescu." Okay, and these people were literally in the middle of a revolution. And these are times that I think back on because I kind of feel like we're in a similar shift of times and things and situations that I've seen before. And I remember being a child and hearing that word revolution, and it makes you want to like throw your fist in the air, you know, revolution, yes, you know, but in all reality, it was not. And these poor people were left with nothing. And there was no food, there was no medicines, there was no, you know, goods and services. And people, you know, were literally dying in churches at that time because there was no health care, there was nothing for these people. And so my mom reported back and said, you know, here's the real situation, what's going on here. And Steve D'Angelo, who's very known in the cannabis world, medical cannabis world of Harborside in California, was one of the very first dispensaries as well, and on Time Magazine, one of the crusaders for the medical uses of cannabis, is who had headhunted her. And he said, what's it going to take? And she put together a program, and that entailed, you know, importing equipment from Germany and rebuilding the factories and contracting farmers to grow hemp for, I mean, 2.5 years before they were actually even processing and utilizing the hemp. And her first collection launched. Okay, and she was in every top magazine, In Style, Vogue. I mean, the industry had never seen anything like it. You know, like the first high-end hemp apparel fashion line was called Earth Goods and Ecolution. And there was also Earth Tribe. There was, like 3 different brands that they were doing at that time, or that my mother was doing at that time. And that got the attention of some of the most phenomenal, willing to take a chance designers and buyers. So the very first $1 million order for hemp fabrics came from a company called Rug Barn. And some of y'all might remember Rug Barn. They used to be a mall store, a very cool mall store. They had like, tree lamps, and it was all natural fibers. It was like the coolest home furnishing store in all the malls. And so Rug Barn came with the first $1 million order. Here's mom, she's got that factory up going in Romania. They're manipulating productions to get more for the runs. I mean, her first collection, she did a common warp and changed out the weft. Okay, and in the fabric world, typically that is not an entirely new fabric development. That means you kept the loom strung with one yarn and you're just switching out the other one that's going the other way. Okay. But it made it to where the time and motion for the factories and the ability to create more products, with that production, we had one loom, but we had made 12 different fabrics off of that common warp. So yeah, so, nobody would have ever known. Nobody would have ever known that those were the same warp yarn, and that was just one loom. Just kept going and switching out that weft.
And that's why, in a couple things we have to, do this, real quick, because first of all, guys, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna I don't care who hears this recording, I don't give a damn. This is the truth. Whatever questions y'all have about Summer's company, Enviro Textiles, you need to contact her and ask her. Okay. Don't think you're going to get off of this and get on a side call with me and talk about all kind of shit for me to get on another call with her and try to occupy her time. That bullshit is not going to happen. If you ain't ready to pay hundreds of dollars an hour for me to engage, you need to ask your questions to her while you have her on the phone. Don't waste my time calling me, asking me all this stuff on the side to get back in contact with her and bug living shit out of her, because she's got other stuff going on. So with that being said, Summer, how do you want people to contact you about your company? Because JJ don't own Enviro Textiles. And they ain't got no business asking me shit. They need to ask you. So how do you want people contacting you?
I mean, it's pretty easy to contact us. It's always great to jump on our website and spend some time looking around on
Which
there.
is Enviro, is it envirotextiles.com?
Envirotextiles.com. Yeah. And so, not only are you going to see our products, but you're going to read about us. We've got a lot of our lab studies and results on there. We created what's called our sustainable biodegradable product transparency walkthrough. So like back in that shift from the 90s to the 2000s, when people were going from eco to, oh, well, it's natural fibers and it's organic. That was the very first sign. My mother is an Einstein. Okay. She is a total Einstein, and she sees things. She's also a visionary, and she sees things an average of 10 years ahead of when it's going to happen. And there's been times in my life where I even told her I thought she was crazy. I'm like, you're crazy. That's not going to happen. I don't know why you think people would even believe that, or it's going to go that direction, because people are getting smarter. And we now even have these devices in our hands. We can look up stuff all the time, and I'm telling you guys, she's been right every single time.
Great.
She called it 20 years ago that the industry was going to go towards regenerated cellulose. And she called it that, that greenwashing was going to be one of the worst, what do you call it? When they lie about their market, false advertising,
Yeah.
that
Oh,
the greenwashing.
I've seen a little bit of that with your mom, because the first, like me and your mom had the first conversation about seed conditioning maybe 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. And at the time, I'm like, in one ear, out the other. I got to do this, that, or whatever in the third. But now it's starting to come around, and people are talking about, the resin, that's left over on the seed is what's making some of these crops go hot and things like that, because seeds were not properly conditioned prior to growing
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's what Barbara was talking about right there, So yeah, you are 100% correct on that. And like, I encourage everybody to tap in, to what you're doing, a lot of history, and I wanted to bring I know he doesn't even know I'm gonna call him out, but I see my buddy. We're gonna take this over to Hawaii real quick. My buddy Theo Alexander is out there in Hawaii, and he's out there in the field. He's doing something. But Theo, what do you got going on over there, man? Why are you so interested in this today? He's like, oh shit, JJ
All
put me on.
right. Yeah, there you go. Put me on the spot, man.
Yeah,
But nah, man, I love what you're doing, JJ. And thanks for spending time with us, Summer.
man.
I'm up here in the trails in North Shore, Hawaii. I just leased a property, about 8.5 acres, and we're doing some rehabbing right quick. We got some Polaris trails, off-rail trails we're gonna do for vets, some rec therapy, horticulture therapy, things like that. But the reason why I'm on the call today, because I have a particular interest in hemp fabrics. We see where hemp is going with the straws and the paper plates and stuff like that, forks, utensils. We see it replacing that gradually, but I would love to have some underwear that's comfortable and breathes. You know what I mean? I mean, I have a history of eczema, you know what I mean? So it's always uncomfortable to try to buy something new. I can never wear anything off the rack. I always got to wash it with non, how you say, well, allergen, non-allergenic,
Yeah.
to get all the dyes and things out, whatever the packing dust, whatever that is. And I've always had a problem with that, even with diapers. So I've always tried to source things that, would make life a little bit comfortable. It's never comfortable when you have itchy underwear on. I don't care where you So that's kind of my main interest, innovation of what you guys have created and adding on to it. So if there's a possibility to link with you, and like I said, JJ, appreciate it, man. And thanks for
Yeah,
coming
man.
too.
It's
You know what I
all
mean? You
good.
always bring us the best people, man. So I
Hey,
appreciate it.
that's because I go to NoCo. I meet these people, we vibe, we connect, and then I just turn right around and just put them in front of y'all and let y'all,
Right.
let magic happen,
Hey, I just want to give y'all a quick view of what I'm looking at.
Oh, thanks, Theo. Thanks.
Anytime you guys want to come out this way, we got some glamping going on. We got a couple of Airbnbs. We're just trying to bring more good people to the island to also improve the education opportunities and the product, service, supplies when it comes to industrial hemp and all the other things that industrial creates, even biofuel. But
Yes, yeah. I see an active duty RX business trip in the near future to come chat about products.
I'm gonna hold you to that. Definitely. But the invitation is definitely open. I mean, and with the hemp fabrics, I would love to delve into what the possibilities are of designing some particular things, even the scrubs for people who work in the medical field. You know what I mean? Because it's bacterial, antiviral. These are some of the equipments that we need to be wearing, the modalities we need to wear in rooms where we have to scrub in and scrub out. You know what I mean? People don't think about, the attachment of all the different viruses and MRSA that can attach to your uniform and you take it home to your family, as well as wearing it back to work with patients. So any kind of fabrics that present the type of thing that hemp does to keep us protected, I'm interested. I'm very interested in developing that if it's not already on the market.
Summer,
Yeah.
what you got, girl? Y'all got anything going with
No,
scrubs?
I love that, Theo. You know what, Theo? I think that your sensitivity with those boxers was actually your body already protecting you because it's so important. It's so important. And people just don't know. And that's why I mentioned earlier, start with those sensitive areas and those places that are the hottest temperatures and be aware. One of the most common analogies I'll use with people when I start talking about educating them on how important fabric is I remind them about, when they said, don't leave your water bottle in your car on a hot day.
Yeah.
Because it's offsetting those toxins in your water and then you're drinking.
It leaches. Right.
Yes.
Right.
It's the same thing with what you wear. And as soon as you say that to somebody, it's like a light bulb goes off. They're like, oh my God, I never even thought about it. You know,
Right.
they had never even thought about it. And I got you with hemp boxers. Okay. I got some hemp
Yeah.
tinsel
Okay.
boxers at the shop right now.
Theo,
What?
get
All right. All
Theo, get
right.
Summer's
I'm about to have a dinner
information.
order. Yes.
Contact
Yes.
Summer. Don't be like,
Yes.
hey JJ, I need to get in touch with Summer.
Hey,
Ain't
I'm guilty.
nobody
I'm
hiring
guilty.
me to do nothing. You need to contact
Gotcha.
her. Don't
Okay. I
No,
appreciate
there's
it. I
some
appreciate it.
and you know, the medical industry is huge in
Mm, mm.
needing this material. I mean, so my mother's the woman that actually had done all the first lab studies and
Wow.
proved that it's antibacterial, antifungal, anti-yeast, UV
Wow.
resilient, infrared. I mean, there's studies that she hasn't even put out yet
Wow.
that she said, yeah. And so you know, when we first had done those studies, we got the attention of TechCrunch. It's like a big media outlet.
Yes. Yes. I
And
know.
yeah, and so TechCrunch did an article about us. We didn't even know. They did an article about
Wow.
us. Next thing you know, we're getting all these calls like, what do you mean we're in tech? What's TechCrunch? You know, this was like 20 years ago. And so next thing you know, we're getting requests from the medical field. But here's the thing, okay? Getting in the medical field versus having people that knew the advancements of hemp that wanted it in their private facilities. You know, so we've had a lot of small private facilities that have been getting lab coats, scrubs.
Yes.
We have a guy that's like one of the largest cart covers. You know,
Oh
things
wow.
I had never even thought of. I'm like, what's a cart cover? You know, like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, that is something that no wonder. And wow, they're going through
Right.
these, and it's always been disposable as well.
Right.
So it's like, not only is it this toxic product, but then it's just going straight up in the landfill every single patient.
Right.
You know, I
Right.
barely even got used and it's now
Right.
in the landfill. You know, these are the things we're trying to educate people on is it's like, yo, you know, not only are these healthy and good products, but start looking at the amount of waste a single person is creating. You know,
Right.
you start looking around and being like, wow, okay, you know what? I am generating a lot of waste and you know, we're supposed to be the stewards of the land and the
Yes.
animals and our environment and making sure that it's here and healthy for future generations. And
Yes.
so, you know, you start kind of getting people to understand that and pulling on the heartstrings of humanity. And next thing you know, it's it's just a trickle effect. They start seeing it for themselves. They start
Okay.
understanding it more. These are things that nobody's ever even thought of before. You know, so
Yes.
people go, well, don't you get so frustrated with people? I said, why would I? Because they don't know. I said, you
Right.
know, it's not their fault. It's not their fault.
Right.
They don't know. And, you know, when I was a teenager, so I was like one of the very first people to go and introduce industry trade shows to him. Okay. And so I was doing the home and the HD Expo, which is like a huge home and garden industrial interior show. I was doing the Magic Show, which is a huge fashion apparel show.
Uh,
Um, and people would be very rude and frustrating because it was always about whatever the hot thing was that season.
right.
You know, and people would be like, doesn't it just get you? And I said, you know what? It did when I had first entered the scene because I felt like everybody should be listening and giving an opportunity to something that can bring so much to humanity.
Right.
Um, and you know, hemp is one of those things you don't have to learn too many things about hemp to be completely captivated by it.
Right.
You know, hemp
That's a
is
fact.
captivating. And the more you learn, the more you're captivated and the more you realize, you know, how much it can do for us. But I had to come up with a mantra for myself when I was like 16. I remember I was at my first magic show and I'm not gonna lie, it was Master P, y'all. Master P.
Make them say it. Da, da,
Yeah. Nah.
da.
Nah.
Master P, okay. Um, his security guy had met me, and I was making waves in streetwear, you know, because I was like, this
Right.
is where it's at. Like these are people.
Right.
These people smoke. They
Right.
like fashion. Like,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh,
Oh, you
Summer, you're
cut out.
can't hear you, Summer. You're kind of I can see you, but can't hear you right now. Nope, cannot hear you. We got to
Yeah,
get you switched
some
over got to switch you over to an iPhone. That Android is starting to show. Okay, okay, I
Stop.
can see you. There you
there
now
she
we
is.
can hear you.
Is that now you can hear me?
Now
Yeah.
we can hear you. That was that
Okay.
Android feature.
So I'm in streetwear. Master P's security guy was like, "You have to meet P. He's got this new clothing line, all this stuff." And so they're requesting me, So I go over there, and I'm presenting my best. I figured out really quickly that I couldn't wander in to meet designers and say, "Hey, I want to introduce you to some hemp fabrics,"
Right.
because they all would give me this like, stink face, like, "What hemp? What? I don't know about them." I mean, it was
I don't
like
want to
the
smoke nothing today.
no, well,
Right.
and
Right.
people think it's itchy, scratchy, hippie
Yeah.
style
Right.
stuff. They don't realize how far it's come and all
Exactly.
these amazing blends and everything. And so, I learned real quick. I had to present my best. I'd have my hemp silk charmeuses and my hemp
Nice.
cells and my OG hemp fleeces and like things that were like butter
Nice.
that anybody would touch and be like, "Oh my God, what? And what do you mean this is hemp?" The jaw droppers. So I would present it on my arm and I'd come in like, "What's up? Let me show you." And I would kind of, you know, use what I had. I said, "Let me show you these new eco materials." And I'd have them touching it by the time I'd say, "Those are hemp fabrics." And then, oh, they pull their hand away. "What do you mean those are hemp fabrics?" So,
That's how I still feel with my business cards today. When people hold it and then I tell them it's hemp and they drop the card.
yeah.
Funny.
Yeah, or they're smelling it like they think they're gonna smell some like gums or something.
You're gonna think the
Hell
crazy
no.
one day I literally gave my card to a cop and told him it was hemp paper. He pulled out a cigarette lighter and burnt, he set the end of it on fire because he wanted to smell it.
Oh my God. Yeah, yeah. No, these were the days I was playing off that. I had the very first chronic cologne. I remember Angel came out with the chronic candy and he had this chronic cologne he had found. I said, "Yo, I need that." And he goes, "You do?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna spray all my business cards with it." And he said, "All right, you can have it." So I
Oh,
was
that's cool. That's cool.
but but I have met Master P, and the first thing I said, "Hey, I want to introduce you to these hemp fabrics. You could be the first one in the scene offering something like this. We can make anything you could dream of happen with these hemp fabrics." And he gave me that crusty. And the first thing that I just was immediately like, you know what? We've all become slaves to cotton and these toxic products and all the bullshit. And I turned around and I walked away. And, I have a different stance these days because, like, I even saw an ad last night. We're seeing more and more like active wear brands trying to go organic. They're finally kind of educating on the fact that, like, you should not be wearing these horrible synthetics in the gym, and
Right.
sweating in these materials. And so I seen an ad last night that said, "Say goodbye to cotton and only wear our wool." And I was like, no, like, cotton is still a natural fiber. And so, cotton is not antibacterial and induces bacterials. Okay.
Right.
Cotton is not, breathable and wicking and all these things, but it's still a natural fiber. And it's a wonderful fiber to blend with hemp too. And as long as you
Did
keep
that.
a majority
Prove it.
hemp,
Yes.
I don't know if you have one of my shirts, JJ. I know you had gotten the battle pack that
No,
you
I
said.
don't. I don't have a shirt. There's somebody on this call that should be getting me situated with making a shirt out of hemp here pretty
As
soon.
soon as we get measurements,
Uh-huh. Yeah, as soon as we can iron out a time that works for both parties.
we
I mean,
just need
I
measurements.
had it on my schedule twice. I'm just putting it out there.
Let's.
You gotta hemp them out, Terry. We,
I'm,
we,
oh,
we got
hey,
we got the hemp them
honestly,
out.
I'm listening to everyone. What you all are putting out, down to the underwear, man. Honestly, it's like, yo, this is And those materials that I got from you, Summer, just like you said, a lot of people don't know how far hemp has come. I mean, when I got an opportunity to feel those knits, to feel the stretch in it, you know, it's like, okay, it opens up your mind so much because, as you stated, when you're dealing with cotton and just a student of fashion and materials, because I'm also a tailor. So, you know, cotton used to be from back in the day. That was a large force in America that moved America. So it's the fact of, you know, so much has been put in to make cotton so popular that now if you're saying, okay, bringing another fiber in, like you said, and it already has a stigma where it's hard. The first garment that I actually got a chance to feel and saw the content and saw that it was hemp was from Ralph Lauren jeans.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, this is better than denim. You know, and in my mind, it was like, what's going to get better than denim? Come on, Levi Strauss, everybody knows they're denim.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so now when I feel this, I'm like, well, and this is hemp. But once again, that's denim. That's something heavy and abrasive. So now you're talking about, wow, when I got the chance to feel those knits that you sent and saw how they're breathable, you know, and then even these agents that, I mean, you all educated me. I didn't even know about, you know, the antibacteria and things like that. My brother-in-law, he suffers with eczema very, very bad. And I'm like, I mean, when I'm hearing this testimony, it's like, okay, you know, I mean, it's so easy to put these pieces together, and then to be able, I believe it's a large market there. But once again, it's you know, some things you have to do, kind of like by experiment. You have to get it out to the people, to the public, and once they make, that's the way I've grown my business. Once they have the opportunity to feel it, experience it, you don't have to even sell it anymore. It sells itself.
That's a fact.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, you know, with the eczema and the different things that people are battling, and you know, we see it more and more and more, and it's like, okay, we have to start attributing all this junk around us as playing such a major part of, you know, setting us up for these issues. And some stuff, it's been since we were born, you know, like we're making the right decisions now, but we're still having to battle some things that were around when we were born. And I would advise everybody to take cold pressed hemp seed oil as your omega source. You know, the cannabinoids that are in the hemp, and then those omegas and those good fatty acids. I mean, there's nothing like it. And if you stick with it, you know, with a lot of these kind of products, nutraceuticals, you know, you have to stick with it for a month before you're even going to start to see the difference. But with the hemp seed oils, within a week, 10 days, people are like, oh my gosh, this is, my skin's better. I'm not having to use lotion as much. I'm noticing it in my vision. You know, if you have friends or family that are battling diabetes, we've seen people that are literally about ready to lose their feet, and they start taking hemp seed oil. It's important to kind of know too, with a lot of natural healing, it's about a trifecta. It's always about a trifecta. You know, it can't be one thing. You have to find that balance that's going to make that connection for your body to start having really that major healing, and you'll see it overnight. But you know, a little bit of baking soda water in the morning to balance the pH, and some hemp seed oil. We've seen people be able to get rid of their gangrene in their feet within 7 days. And not lose their feet. You know, I mean, there is so much amazing, you know, not only testimonies, but now testing that's being done. You know, Canada's done a lot with the hemp seed oil. There's a lot of information coming out of Israel when it comes to the medical side of things. But, you know, like for us, in a lot of these countries where my mom was headhunted and went off to develop, there was like ancient traditions. You know, in China, they had been lining their shoes with hemp for thousands of years because it keeps the fungus away from their feet. You know, so it was like, okay, wait a minute, there's something to this. You know, they're lining their shoes with it. Why? Oh, it keeps the fungus away. Well, it's got to be antifungal then. Well, we don't know. Okay, well, guess what? We're going to send it to a US accredited lab and we're going to prove it to people, because we can talk till we're blue in the face, or we can show them. And like you said, you know, with the apparel and some of the products, you can get them in front of them as soon as they feel it, they see it, and they're going, wow, this is really nice. This is nicer than I thought. And yeah, I do want to support this. So I'm going to get some. And then as soon as they do, they're always back for more. Like Theo's boxers, you know, we're going to get him a pair. And next thing you know, he's going to be like, I need 20 of them. All my boxers are switched over. Okay.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's really that simple when you can get it in front of people. And, you know, like JJ was saying, you know, without places like NOCO, it's hard because where do we have to come together? And, you know, I was the kid that was part of these organizations when we had our grassroots organizations that really led the way for all these things that we're at right now. And these organizations either were too ahead of their time and didn't make it, or they sold out and didn't make it. So here we are all of a sudden in a time where it's like, look at all this advancement, look at all this support, look at all these people. We've spread our wings around the earth, but without that connection to be able to come together and utilize each other, you know, we're all like these single warriors off in our little corners of the world. And yeah, we're making impact, but imagine, you know, if we had these places that could bring this creative and unity that's going on. Like I get more frustrated watching how much has been wasted in the last 10 years because, you know, people just didn't want to work together. They wanted to be the first to do something that they knew nothing about, and it didn't go anywhere. And all of that got wasted, you know, and a lot, and there's only a handful of, you know, peers and experts in the world right now that really know what they're doing and have honored the plant in the way it was meant to, you know. Right now, like everybody's going, when are you guys going to make your fabrics in the US? And I'm going, you know, it's a long way out. And it's a long way out. And there, you know, there's a handful of places all saying they're coming out with something soon. But if you dig into what they're doing, it's, you know, it's not that nice. And then some of the processes might not be as toxic and horrible as others, but we're still depleting the value of our materials. So, you know, we don't want to see that. And mom and I aren't going to do that. And right now with these tariffs, it's forcing us to have to make some really big decisions because, you know, for us, like all of our international business, we're gonna make it no matter what, but we don't want to see all of our thousands of US brands that aren't going to make it, or our US facility that is the facility that makes all of this possible for everybody. You know, that's what really built the industry, was us saying, we're not only going to develop these materials, but we're going to bite the bullet and we're going to run these productions and we're going to hold stock so that any designer, any creative, any brand can come along and get whatever they need. And any way we can get hemp in the hands of these people, this is an advancement towards the next. And you know, I just did last year, we did all the metropolitan opera houses in New York and London. And that's like, you know, it was a decent few 100 yard, nothing crazy. And it's a one-time gig. It's not like we're going to hear from them again for 10 years. But that kind of medium, that placement, and showing how high end and how, you know, conscious that even a group like the Met can be, is what's helping to advance all of our goals forward. So, you know, without facilities like this, we don't have that ability to keep spreading it further and further. So, you know, it's a really hard time right now, you guys. Like we're basically, you know, when these tariffs hit, and I told JJ because he was there at NOCO with me, and it was the first time in my career that I boycotted a speech.
Yeah, you punk. I'm gonna talk about you real quick because I was emceeing and I had to introduce your ass and you weren't
Oh
there.
yeah. No,
Yeah,
I
and I
heard you
called you on
didn't
the
get the
phone. Hey,
memo.
Summer, where you at? I missed it. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
See, and I don't know how you didn't get the memo. And then you were calling me like 2 minutes before I was supposed to be on stage, and I'm like, I'm way over here at my booth. That's crazy, and I'm not going to the stage.
I'm like,
Um,
what?
and then I heard the announcer like even read off my bio or something. I met him later that night. And somebody said, "Oh, what do you know about Summer Star?" And he goes, "What do I know about Summer Star?" He starts reading off my whole CV. I'm like, "Who the hell is this guy?" And it turns
Yeah,
out,
thanks.
so, but listen, never in my career have I boycotted a speech. Any chance I get to get in front of people, I want to talk to people and I want to connect and I'll feel my crowd and I'll find those things that are gonna like get that ripple going. Okay. But I mean, I was supposed to get up there and talk about tariffs, and literally 6 hours before that, they had jumped to 145% overnight.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay. And I was so angry and I was in such shock. And I also had this big, beautiful booth at this trade show where I had people coming to see me, and I needed to be at my booth. That's where I needed to
Yeah.
be. I did not want to be on the stage getting upset because everybody knows I'm going to say whatever I need to say. And then it's not going to
Yep.
be good. It was not going to be good. And sometimes, like you have to accept that coming into an industry. Like I have felt very bad at times for telling people things that they don't want to hear, but that's what's going to save them from making those mistakes,
Hey,
and look,
God,
it is what it is.
God sees everything you do, girl. And
It
if
is what
you're
it
if
is.
you're securing your place with your maker, it is what it is. So
Well, it's not even about me. It's about not watching them make the same mistakes that either we've already had to go through or I've watched happen 1,000 times to people, and it's slowing down the progress for all of us,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know. And so I just, ever since then, it's like every day we're going, what's next? And so here I was at NOCO, and my mom's getting calls from factories she hasn't even been at for 30 years, that are saying, what can we do? What can we do? What can we help you? We want to help you guys. And I'm going to say this because it's the truth. It's like they still have the same problems they had 30, 40 years ago, and why we left them in the first place, because we either couldn't get the quality consistency down because, and I hate to say it, but most of the time it's because people don't want to do their job. Okay. If they would have like actually been at the machines doing what they were supposed to do in the first place, we could have made something work. But every step of the process is important again, you guys, and so either we couldn't get the quality consistency, and there just simply wasn't enough hemp. Okay. So these places still have the same issues, but now we're going, you know what, but we could deliver our yarns to them, and we could have for the most part, have our quality and consistency. We're going to have to deal with the calibrating and the tension points and things on machines with especially these stronger hemp yarns. But we also won't have to worry about not having enough hemp. We just bring our yarns there. So we're in the process right now of shifting our developments to countries we haven't even worked in for 20, 30, 35 plus years since I was a child. I'm older than I look too, by the way, y'all. But but it's also a very hard time because it's like this is basically us having to do everything we did 40, 30 years ago. But it's going to be easy to do the shift for our wovens. Okay, but it's not going to be that easy to do for knitted fabrics. Knitted fabrics have much higher liabilities and problems in production. They're prone to having flaws, all these things. And we always upheld our hemp knits to be higher quality than even synthetics. So it's a really hard time right now because I'm going, what do I tell my knit clients? Or, you know, here we are starting knits all over again. Anybody that's been designing with hemp for 20, 30 years is, I tell them we're going to be having to start over on knits. And they're like, oh Lord, are you serious? How bad's it going to be? That's the first thing they ask me. How bad's it going to be? And I go, well, you know us, we're going to reject it until it gets right. You know, we won't do a whole big run. We're going to do a little, see how it goes. We do a little, we see how it goes, because in the fabric world, they say that with knits, you should have up to 10% flaws. Well, that is not acceptable when we're talking high end, high price point, high performance fabrics. You know, no designer is going to spend high price point on something that's a 10% flaw ratio. You could barely get a pattern piece out of a yard. Okay. And I know Terry knows what I'm talking about. You know, this is like, you know, you've got such severe amount of waste, and you've got torquing and other issues you got to be more focused on with your knits than having to watch out for a flaw every freaking half a meter or something.
I want to interject because I understand that. But if you look at a lot of the high-end fashion that's coming out, the knits, I don't even know if the designers are doing this on purpose or is this how they're having their weavers to do it. But a lot of the knits that are on high end that are walking runway now, they are designed to look flawed. Have you seen that?
Good, because we need that right now. The hemp world needs that right
now. I say that because, you know, I even think kind of like how you were saying a few minutes ago about the cottons, you know, your staple fibers, and then all the way down to what they use for like cottonol, just a small, pretty much will be throwaway. But even with that situation that you're facing, maybe graded, you know, to be able to still sell, because if you're dealing with a designer, if I'm creating something, and like I said, if I have to, in order to get that look, to have someone actually pull out a couple of strands, so you'll see like 4 strands miss to be able to distress it. And when you were saying at the opera, I used to work at the opera in Atlanta. I never forget one time we made this beautiful gown, but in the beginning of the process, we had every sketch on our wall, so we knew every piece that we were making. And it was this beautiful gown, and I never could, I was like, where is this gown? And I did not know we actually made the gown. That was one of the first pieces that we made, but it went to a distressor. And the gown in this the sketch was distressed. And when we made the gown, of course, it was beautiful. I was like, wow, this is so beautiful. And I was like, okay, I never saw that in the sketches, but when it came back and it was distressed, it almost disappointed me, because it was like, this is what they did to this beautiful gown we made. But I say that because that was the look. We just didn't know we were creating a gown that they were going to distress. So when I say that, as far as if you have some of the flaw, is it a possibility that you would have someone that could work with that versus just, you know, trash this? It's nothing can be done. Because I know some designers that they come from the bottom and they work with the scraps. And honestly, yeah. I have as a tailor, I have adapted to some of that. I mean, sometimes if I'm making, you know, a high end, a suit or something, then I have to have that top material. But if it's something that I'm like, okay, what are we doing with the remainder of this material? And they're like, oh, it's trash, but it's beautiful pieces. I might say, put that over here. Let me collect that, and I'll work with it to create something. So, I mean, that's just an idea.
Well, I mean, that's the like history of the hemp industry, is having to find a way or work around. Whenever you're working with true natural fibers, there's always going to be slubs, imperfections, shade variations, you know. And I mean, as a designer, you have to list that under your terms and conditions too, because you don't want to have, you know, Neiman Marcus is looking for a lot of eco products right now.
Hey guys, real quick.
You don't want them. Huh, JJ?
Real quick, looking at the time, which is fine, but I see my buddy Keith Reed raised his hand, and he might have an interesting input based on some of the stuff that he's doing. Keith, what's going on, brother? Unmute yourself, please.
Hey, everybody, can you hear me loud and
Yep.
clear?
Yes, sir.
Cool. All right, first and foremost, I believe everything happens for a reason. I'm on this call for a reason. I met JJ way back. I say way back, it was 2020.
Yeah.
Just to give a little history, and I want to say it's a very, very small world. And I'll get back to that here in a little bit. A few things I want to touch on. I started studying hemp back in 2019. I have a fashion brand. Our fashion brand has been building since 2015. Our logo is trademarked. It's official, and we've been on a process, or been going through a process, and this is per me, that has been searching for hemp products that I can show be fully transparent with our clients. And I've been wanting to find something that is unique. To go back to It's a Small World, Summer, well, yeah, to put this all in perspective, I reached out to someone last December because I've been scouring LinkedIn, talking to people, which is how I met JJ. Been scouring LinkedIn, and December 9th, I just found this out. You said Enviro Textiles, and it didn't click until 15, 20 minutes ago, and I've been cheesing over here ever since. If you can see me in the background. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna turn my camera on. I'm in the kitchen cooking.
What you cooking? Look, you cooking. What you making?
I got a little spaghetti going on. Got some gravy. You know what I'm saying? Some homemade spaghetti.
All right.
So,
All right.
It's a pleasure being here on this call. December 9th, I met someone named Barbara on LinkedIn. I met your mom on LinkedIn. Check this out, because I ran across her bio. It's very simple. I shot her a message and said, "How can we connect?" And your mom said, "First and foremost, get our sample pack, and then we can, talk and go further." Because first and foremost, I've linked up already a U.S. based producer that's going to sew our fabrics and sew our products. If you see here, that's our brand logo. And I also met up with a U.S. Person who is going to be a part of our dyeing team, a U.S. A young lady who is going to be producing or helping with designs as well. So Milton, I want to be talking to you also, because I'm hearing some things that might help us, and we can work together also.
Me and Terry have known each other since we were kids. Like, our moms went to high school together.
When you said this, so I came in a little late. You said the switches. I was back here laughing my butt off.
Yeah.
I'm Texas. I know.
Yeah, we used to get our ass to toe up together. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll be short. Thank you, JJ, for inviting me on this call.
Yeah, man.
So and Summer, I want to, and we will be doing business with you all. To touch on what Terry just said about the flawed fabrics, that's an amazing idea. That's an amazing idea. I'm willing to. I'm willing to work with those flawed fabrics and make something out of them, along with the good ones as well. But just like JJ, you said, Terry, you said the runways are showing flawed fabrics as top tier. They're ripping holes and all kinds of things. So I want to raise my hand and say, I'm here to help work with anything that you produce. Just last week, and I'm gonna close with this. Just last week, I was trying to find your mama's message, because I'm like, all right, I'm ready now. I'm ready, because I do a lot of things. I'm ready now, and I could not find her message in my LinkedIn messages, because I have so many. And you said Barbara, and you said Enviro Textile. So I Googled, I went to the website. I'm like, I know that logo. And I went straight to the message. I was like, oh, thank you,
Yep.
thank you, thank you. This is a full circle. We will be working together with each other, and I'm happy to be on this call. That's what I want to say.
Look, so first of all, Terry, how do you want and this is a specific call, but Terry, how do you want people to contact you?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, right now we're finishing up the website, but I mean, I'm old school. You can call my shop. I'll put that information out on there. I'll give you my email information.
You put it, go on and put it on the recording, bro, because ain't nobody
Okay,
gonna call
well,
me and ask
let
me
me
how
let
to.
me give you let me give you the
Yeah.
number is 251-422.
Woman, here, slow
All right.
down. Look, I'm old school.
Hey,
I'm gonna put you in my contact
okay.
right now.
I got you. I'm following directions.
All right, Terry Milton.
All right.
What W
All right.
WILTON.
Wilton.
Yeah.
That's
All
correct.
right. All right, Terry. Phone number.
251-422.
Got it.
7565.
7565. So 251-422-7565. What is your email address?
The email is the same, Terry Wilton 25 at Gmail. Just that simple. And let me help you now. A lot of times I'm in the sewing room on the machine. I have, a couple people that answer the phones for me. Just tell them where you met me and they'll get the message to me. And when I slow down on the machine, I put the headphones on and I'll give you a call back.
Now JJ got to talk a little bit of shit, because when we first met, Keith, back in the day, if you had stayed in touch and asked me the things that you need to ask, I could have put you in touch with these people a whole lot sooner.
JJ, I wasn't ready. I've been putting things together. Look, I believe in God, and God is putting these pieces together for me.
Amen.
So that it's a smooth transition. And right now, I've been putting pieces of the puzzle together since 2019. We started, I helped with growing hemp and bringing hemp into Louisiana in 2019, and worked with that brand for 3 years. And I understand that it's an antimicrobial. I understand that it remediates the soil when you grow it. I mean, I even started our own hemp brand with my family to be able to start producing it here in the U.S. And that's another project. But I mean, JJ, thank you very much once again.
You're welcome.
Look, I'm here because of you, and I've been following you ever since we first met.
I know.
Now is the time. Now is the time.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm going to order your mom, you all swatches after this call right now because of this, because it's all happening. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, and Keith, if you want to reach out to me directly, it's easy. It's just the summer@envirotextiles.com. And
Absolutely, I will.
yeah, because mom's pretty overwhelmed right now with us moving all of our productions. I mean, we're going to continue where we're at for the world, but it's not going to make sense for the U.S. unless something gives with these tariffs. And we're not sitting back and holding our breath.
No.
And at first I was like, okay, we have no choice. Like, we have to do this to save the U.S. But over the last 2 weeks, I'm starting to feel like, you know what? It all happens for a reason. And this is going to give the world more hemp fabrics than we had ever had before. And so maybe this was supposed to happen. We're still nowhere near as close to having it in the US, but at least we're going to have other options. And, it's hard for me to think about going backwards with the knits because, being developers of something that had such controversy from the get, it was always about bringing the best, showing that it's the best, bringing the best, having the best products. It was easy to justify higher price points for things that, you could literally market and say, hey, you can run over this t-shirt 50 times with a semi truck and it's going to pop out the other end. And you could put it on and rock it, so it's hard to think like, okay, we're going a little bit backwards. But at the same time, it's like, you know what, we're going to do whatever it's going to take, because we definitely can't let it just go to the wayside. We can't let it slow down the movement here. you know, we're finally at a point in the US, we're seeing some facilities that are doing decorticating, but all that decorticating is just barely getting to the fiber. There's nowhere near enough fiber to start getting real about bringing those into fabrics. And in all reality, the fiber is going to have higher value going into different composites and component parts than it ever would into fabrics for the US for a long time anyways. And I'm sure, JJ, I'm sure you hear this a lot too, where it's like people want to come to us and be like, why aren't we making our hemp paper and doing these fabrics and all this stuff? And, you know, I told a lady at NOCO, I said, well, you know, the paper is easy because right now lumber companies don't want to have to pay to dispose of their waste. So the paper companies are able to just come and pick it up for free. Okay, so they have the cost of the logistics to go get it, but the lumber companies don't have to pay to get rid of their waste, and the paper companies have no cost other than the logistics to get it. Okay, so until we have a hell of a lot of hemp growing to the point where we have a hell of a lot of waste,
Yeah.
there's no value there. There's no value. That's never going to help lead hemp into this sustainable future that we want to see and that can happen in this country or anywhere, you know. And logistics have been a major part in playing for any kind of agriculture, you know,
You know,
any kind of
Summer,
agriculture.
Summer,
Mm-hmm.
you touch on something real critical that, that I learned from a mentor of mine. If you get enough breadcrumbs, eventually you'll have a whole loaf of bread. And I think where a lot of people are messing up is they're trying to take these industries that have been around forever and replace them with hemp.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Mm-hmm.
we need to start off with small percentages and integrating into these existing products, giving people time to get comfortable and make that gradual transition. And that's where a lot of people are messing up. They're trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater and it's just not going to work. So I just think, people kind of need to shift their mindset a little bit. And another thing for you, people have to participate in their own. If the U.S. doesn't want to participate in their rescue, you're going to drown, right? But you still have to keep the ship upright and keep, everybody rowing in the same direction. And you have to do what it takes for your company to survive, So if you got to go other places to get it done, getting it done is getting it done. I mean, that's just, how it is. So I want to, we're at an hour and a half now, and this has been an amazing discussion, and I am so thankful and glad for two things. One, we were able to finally connect, and I was able to honor my promise to you, number one. And number two, to see some of these faces that gathered for this. It may have been a small gathering, but it's been a powerful gathering because these are people that I know that have been trying to pull off things for a while. And one lady that I am not familiar with, I want to give her a chance because she just unmuted her microphone. Diane, I see you out here and you unmuted. Do you have something that you want to contribute before we wrap up?
Well, it's actually Diane and Bill Anderson out
what's up,
in
Bill?
South Dakota. I'm a fairly new grower and new to the hemp industry, so I'm the rookie of the bunch here. Summer just hit on some of the questions that I had there. I guess is where is the hemp fabric industry in the United States? I'm amazed that 90% of the herd that's getting shipped around the country is sent in plastic bags. Can't we make burlap bags, to ship this stuff around? And, I need contacts or whatever in order to be able to get, these kind of mills set up, I guess is kind of what I'm looking at doing. Can you give us some pointers?
I mean, I think that's a biggie between the big super sack plastic bags, between the plastic liners and and growing outdoors, between the black bags people are growing in, between I mean, it's like everywhere we look, we're surrounded by all this plastic and these toxic materials. And I will tell you, when it comes to what it would take to do what we do in other places in the world, in the US, this was before the tariffs, okay? Because we don't we don't have the equipment needed, and we also can hardly mill the materials needed. You know, my mother designed a new decorticator 7 years ago, and there was only one facility in the Northwest, Midwest, that could mill the size metal pieces for this piece of equipment, and it was going to take 10 months lead time for one, you know, and we were like, how would we ever take this to market? And we were looking at, okay, do we get parts milled down in Mexico? Where do we, you know, how are we going to build these machines and make them affordable if we can't even find facilities that can produce the parts to make the machines? But so then it was like, all right, well, if we were to build our own factories here, in order for me to do what I can do elsewhere here, this is again before the tariffs, it would have been about $300 to $350 million to build out 5 state-of-the-art natural fiber facilities. Okay, because it's not
Bill,
just
write the check. Write the
Yeah,
check, Bill.
yeah.
just
Well,
on.
it's going to have to be in pieces.
no,
Hey,
And
brother, you bought it up. You got to write the check.
honestly, in all reality, that is not a huge investment when you're talking about doing what we're talking about. This is a multitude of products going to multitudes of industries. You know, when you look at one development of ours, okay, when we focus on new developments, we go, what is the market missing? And what is a product that can lend itself to multiple products? So I might have one single canvas that's going to furniture companies making couches, it's going to bag manufacturers, it's going to shoe manufacturers, it's going to jacket manufacturers, that's making baby carriers in Hawaii, that's making, you know, like that one fabric just lent itself not only to 10 different industries, but within those industries, sometimes hundreds of brands. You know, when you look at cloth baby diapers, for example, cloth baby diapers have been coming back since 2000. Oprah actually did a big review about it back in like the early 2000s. And I would say we have like 150 different brands that produce hemp, cotton, fleece, baby diapers. So, you know, but that same fleece goes to all kinds of other products too. So, you know, now with the tariffs, and this is where it gets frustrating because, you know, this whole new system is really supposed to be bringing manufacturing back to the USA. Well, of course, my rolls of fabric that are coming here to promote US manufacturing into a product, it still has to be made into something. But then we also have the issue of, well, then why is the equipment that we need to build our own manufacturing double the tariff as a consumer good? So if consumer goods are at 145% from China right now, guess what it is on the equipment needed to build our own manufacturing? 290% or more. And then there's also a duty rate on top of that too. So, you know, the tariffs is a whole crazy thing that a lot of people don't understand. And why would you if you're not doing international development or importing and exporting? These are not things that anybody would know, but there's a duty rate before there's even these various class codes that they're creating for the tariffs. So, you know, the number one thing of why we're not going forward with hemp fabric in the US right now is it's going to take a whole lot of hemp before we have enough fiber to even get real about natural degumming and combing and carding and spinning of long fibers. And, you know, when we talked about the different varieties of hemp, that outer ribbon where the fiber is, there's only about 10 to 12% that's fiber, okay? But then once you grade it into the various grades of fiber, there's maybe only 4% that's textile grade. And if we can get higher values for that textile grade fiber in composites, then why would we want to worry about building even more infrastructure to bring that into a fabric that's going to have a lesser value for our entire industry. So as we're getting off the ground, and with textiles, there's non-wovens and wovens. So we need to perfect and build out all the non-wovens before we're ever going to lead into wovens. And with hemp, one of the most beautiful things we have an opportunity with hemp is that it's a constant value add. So as soon as we've perfected one area and we're ready to take on the next, here comes the next value add. Here comes the next value add. Here comes the next value add. And one of the things that everybody loves about hemp that we've proven to the world, and has, you know, our products have been kind of the catalyst to move all these other areas forward, was this amazing long fiber that's high performance. But that's going to be one of the last things to come in the US. But our value add isn't going to be these little value adds. It's going to be like, hey, now we're into this, now we're into that. At the very end, we're going, now we're ready for the long fiber, and our values just went through the roof. So, you know, I and my mother, same thing, will tell people, you know, if you're new into hemp, whether you're a farmer, whether you're looking at processing, I would love to be the first one to say, let's start focusing on fabric. And I'd love to be making my fabrics here, but I cannot tell anybody that when there's no feasibility or yield to even get serious about that right now. And it's more important to focus on the seed and the grain and that inner woody core, the herd, going to building materials, because that's getting us to our fiber, but it's not quite there yet. And that's going to get us eventually there.
Taking those breadcrumbs and building up to a whole loaf of bread. And I think that's valuable. Summer, thank you so much for your time, your wealth of knowledge, your sacrifice, your family's sacrifice in this space, because we've had some offline discussions about a lot of things. And I know you guys have been through a lot. And I as a veteran, I truly appreciate your sacrifice, because I know y'all go above and beyond and you do things that a lot of people don't necessarily know about, and they'll never know, you know. But I mean, I really thank you and thankful for you. Please tell your wonderful mother I said hello when you get a chance. You'll probably see it on this recording. So, hey, Barbara, how are you? Yeah, guys, please make sure y'all stay engaged and, you know, in contact, you know, with her for your projects, you know, and your needs. And like I said, this would not be possible if I did not go to NOCO. All right. So I'm just saying, you got to support the industry so that they can support you and continue to bring, you know, good things your way. So for 2026, I don't want to hear that crap about, oh, I'm not going to, you don't go to NOCO, I'm probably not going to work with you afterwards, because I'm tired of taking everything and bringing it back here and everybody just wait. No, I'm not doing that anymore. So I'm just saying, guys, you know, support, you know, what's supporting you. I wish everybody a lot of prosperity, you know, in 2025. And like I said, Summer, thank you so much for your time. And, you know, I know you got some cleaning to do, so I appreciate you taking the time to do this with us. And yeah, I will see all of you somewhere on this journey, you know, out here across the United States. And I sincerely hope everybody has a great evening.
Thank you for having me, JJ.
Thanks a lot. Thank you all. Thank you all for your time.
I kept my promise. I kept my promise, Summer. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I know. Good
All
stuff,
right.
JJ.
Y'all have a good evening.
Okay.
Thank
Aloha.
you. Be well. Be well,
Have a great
everybody.
one.
All right.
Yes.
Y'all take care. Bye-bye.
So much fun. All right.